Now in this question, two columns. First column, some statements are given. Of course, these statements may be correct. The second column contains the corresponding explanation for A. Again, this may be correct or incorrect as the case may be, depending on the statements. Now let us consider column A, number 1. Just now in the previous problem we have seen examples of anomers and epimers. Glucose and mannose, epimers, because in carbon number 2 configuration will be different. Now first statement, galactose is the C4 epimer of glucose. Galactose is another aldohexose like glucose. Now the statement is galactose and glucose are related in the form of epimers. We have seen already one case, glucose and mannose, in which the configuration is different at carbon number 2. Galactose is the C4 epimer of glucose. That means galactose and glucose are also examples of epimers, but the difference lies not in the configuration of C1 or C2, but in carbon number 4. Of course, if we look at the structure of galactose and glucose, we can come to the conclusion that this statement number 1 under A is a correct statement. It is correct. Glucose and galactose are epimers because the configuration around carbon number 4 will be different. All right, the corresponding explanation let us see under column R. Glucose and galactose differ in configuration at C4. Just like glucose and mannose differing in the configuration at the second carbon, we find here glucose and galactose can be called as epimers because in these two cases the configuration around carbon number 4 will be different. OH lying in one case on the right hand side and the other case it is lying on the left hand side around carbon number 4. So first one, this assertion, that is correct, and under reasoning this is the correct explanation for this assertion. So this first statement is correct under assertion and the corresponding explanation is also correct. All right, consider the second one under assertion. You see, under assertion or reasoning, it does not mean that always the statements should be correct. Any one of these may be incorrect. All right, consider 2. Glucose and fructose give the same osazone. Formation of osazone is a characteristic reaction of the carbonyl groups. Glucose an aldohexose, fructose a ketohexose. In glucose, carbon number 1 is the aldehydic group. But in fructose, carbon number 2 is the ketonic group. And from the properties of these two, we notice glucose and fructose undergoes this osazone formation reaction, and it has been noticed that both glucose and fructose give the same osazone. So statement 2 under assertion is correct. It is correct. What about the corresponding explanation given for this? During this reaction, stereochemistry at C1 and C2 is destroyed. Stereochemistry at C1 and C2 is destroyed. That means in glucose, C1 carbon, as I have told you just now, contains the aldehydic group, and in fructose, C2 carbon contains the ketonic group, and aldehydic group number 1 in glucose and carbon number 2 in glucose are involved in osazone formation. Similarly, in fructose, which contains the ketonic group carbon number 2 and carbon number 1, again both of them are involved. So whether it is glucose or fructose, C1 and C2 carbon atoms are involved, and this results in the formation of the same osazone. Therefore, for the second statement under assertion, the correct explanation given under reasoning, this is again correct. So 2 statement under A correct, the explanation under 2 is also correct. All right. Third, proteins are made up of alpha amino acids. It is a correct statement. Proteins are made up of alpha amino acids. What about the explanation given for this? During denaturation, secondary and tertiary structures of proteins are destroyed. Now, when we consider the protein structure, 3 types of structures are being discussed: primary, secondary, and tertiary structures. But the explanation is not correct. So, for 3, A under A, 3, that statement is correct, but the explanation given under R for 3 is incorrect. So 3 correct and here 3 incorrect. 4. This question deals with amino acid chemistry. Probably you remember amino acids exist in the form of what are called dipolar ions or Zwitter ions or inner salt. All these 3 mean the same. Inner salt, dipolar ion, Zwitter ion. Now, the statement under A for 4 is, at isoelectric point, the amino group does not migrate under the influence of electric field. Now, the important point about these amino acids is, under acidic condition, cation will be present. Under basic condition, anion will be present. And naturally, under acidic and basic conditions, because of the presence of cations and anions, under the influence of electric field, they will migrate or travel towards the oppositely charged electrode. But for any amino acid, there is a pH. There is a pH at which this amino acid exists as a dipolar ion or Zwitter ion. That means the same molecule at one end cation and at the other end anion. That is why it is called a dipolar ion or Zwitter ion. Zwitter ion means one end of the same molecule having the positive charge and the other end of the same molecule having the negative charge, and so at a particular pH, which is known as the isoelectric point, the amino acid exists as a Zwitter ion. That means at this particular pH, which we call as the isoelectric point, the species will be neutral. It is neither cationic nor anionic, and it will be neutral, and so it will not migrate towards any electrode under the influence of electric field. Therefore, this statement under A for 4 is correct, and the explanation is also